Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. Gonna do just a quick video talking about path management. If you've been watching this channel at all this year, you know the path management in our paths has kind of been they've washed out, they have flooded, and then ultimately flooded the beds. So I want to talk a little bit today about how we're kind of going to manage that going forward. We're changing some things, doing some different things. So let's do it. First, if you are not subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button. If you are subscribed, thanks. Second, a couple things. No-Till Market Garden Podcast, this first episode of the second season went up this week with Mossy Willow Farm. Super cool episode, really insightful, great for this time of year when we're all feeling a little bit burnout. They're awesome, and we talk a lot about like just balancing farm and life. So check that out. Subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or you can subscribe to it here. I put it up on YouTube. Also, we announced a new event on that podcast, also at no-tillgrowers.com, and with Jared Smith and Stephen Cornett, we're gonna go to San Diego, California. Jackson, my partner in No-Till Growers, and I are gonna be in San Diego in February because, right, we're gonna do an all-day intensive with Jared. We're gonna tour his new plots that he's setting up. Stephen Cornett of Nature's Always Right, both of them were on the podcast. He's gonna do a little rundown of his no-till methods on his urban scale. So we're gonna see two different styles, two different scales, and at the end I'm gonna kind of just round it all together and talk a little bit about no-till. So anyway, all that is over at no-tillgrowers.com under the events tab. It's gonna be rad. Okay, so I just wanna start this out by saying I get like 1,000 comments when I'm talking about my paths. People are always like, put wood chips down. Dude, I have tried wood chips, and I'm not saying I'm never gonna try them again. Here's what happens. One, they wash out because we get these crazy rainfalls here in Kentucky that are 3+ inches. I have to, if I want to use wood chips, I've got to readjust the entire approach to the pathways. Second thing about wood chips, I get that everybody gets them for free and people like basically beg them to take them. That doesn't happen for me. We live kind of in an awkward enough space that nobody really wants to come back here. I've got one truck in 3 years that we've been on this particular property to come back and bring us wood chips. I've tried to pay people. I have chased down every truck I can. So the only place I can find them is at the dump, and most of the time they won't load them because it's too wet because of our crazy rainfalls. So that's what we're dealing with, is not great access to wood chips and wood chips that wash out our pathways because we're kind of on a slope. And even though everything is going downhill, right? Like that's the downhill. When we put wood chips here, the water builds up and just washes them out. So we're still working with it, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but for the most part, that's not really a great option for us, so we have to get a little bit creative, and that's what we're doing here. I'll just show you. As you can see in the pathways here, we've got oats and peas. So on the bed tops are all winter cover crops, so that's all rye and tillage radish and a bunch of other things that will either die, like the tillage radish, but they'll help, you know, break up the soil compaction, or rye and vetch and a few other things just kind of mixed in here on the soil, on the bed tops. But in the pathways, we have that oat and pea mix, and the idea with that is we really want to put some roots into the soil to help with water absorption, right? That's going to be helpful here. And the other thing with that is that we're going to allow that to grow pretty tall. I mean, it's just now September 1st or 2nd. So what's going to happen is that's going to grow pretty tall by the time we start getting frosts. And once it gets a hard frost, then it'll die back and it'll create sort of a mulch. Something I've been wanting to do a lot more, and I really would love to do that with our garlic, but we can't do that with our garlic yet because it's got a bunch of, that's our garlic patch for next year, and it's got a bunch of edamame in it. So I don't know that I'll get a chance to get the peas and stuff in there first, but I love the idea of creating a living mulch that dies, that winter kills, and that you can, you know, use as sort of mulch in your pathway. We'll probably still have to clean out some grass and stuff, but maybe it'll help kind of with some water absorption and just keeping the soil in place. So we may go over top of that with some wood chips, maybe in the beginning of the year next year, but ultimately we want that to kind of be, at least for the spring, a sort of a sort of pathway mulch. So that's the first thing that we're doing. So another thing we're doing that's kind of different is we're starting to employ more cardboard. So this bed, lasagna style, this is all cardboard. I don't have any video of us putting this down, but basically put it down, get it wet, cover it with compost. Super simple. Poked holes in the cardboard, and then we planted just with like a trowel, and then we planted all this lettuce that's in there that you can see here. We're gonna start using cardboard like this a lot more, because where the dump won't load wood chips, I got really frustrated and realized, oh, they have a ton of cardboard and they'll give it to me for free. So I have to load it, but it's there. So anyway, that's what I've started doing. It's a great resource for cardboard. And we rip all the tape off. It doesn't have ink on it or anything. So we're just putting that down. And now you can see that we get pretty close here. So if I'm adding cardboard on this side, we could more or less connect those two and then maybe add some wood chips over top or just a little bit of compost to hold it down and keep it wet. And then that's not just like a fungal mat, but it's also a great cover. Yeah, so good for building soil. Earthworms dig it. That's another thing that we're doing. Another thing we're doing, and you can't really see it now because it's kind of been compacted in a little bit, but basically like between each of these pathways, we've been broadforking, and the broadfork, what it's doing is we're literally broadforking the pathway, and we're just trying to open up that compaction a little bit, because these have been pathways for 3 seasons. We've been on this particular farm for 3 seasons, so this has just been walkway. Right, so what happens is that this water builds up right here, and then it sort of rushes over the beds. And you can see this is a spot that it happens, and we end up losing soil, and stuff doesn't perform as well in that spot. And there are a few spots out there like that happens. So what we're gonna do is, like I said, we're gonna broadfork it, and maybe that'll open up for a little bit of water absorption. The other thing that will do is it will allow us to put some wood chips maybe just into those cracks to also allow for a little bit of water absorption. So we are gonna try and utilize a little bit of wood chips that way. One thing we also don't have a lot of access to is straw. I've said this a lot in my videos, but you haven't watched all my videos, that's cool. You should, they're great. Super professionally done. Anyway, we would use straw, but we don't really live in a grain growing region, so straw is not that accessible to us, and what grain is grown here is not exactly, I mean, a lot of it's got the broadleaf herbicide sprayed on it. It's just stuff we can't and wouldn't use in our garden. So that's not something we really have great access to, and we could use hay, but then you're adding weed seeds. And I've tried hay in the pathways. Hay's not a great, unless you're putting it really, really thick, it's not a great weed suppressant. So that's one thing we're doing. We're doing the broad forking, then we're gonna try and add a little bit of wood chips over top of that and see how that works. And I've got one last thing that I'm gonna talk about with the pathways that I think is kind of cool. It's the one I'm most excited about. And it's down here. These are trays of strawberries that we propagated from our old strawberry patch. You're gonna be like, what do strawberries have to do with pathway management? I'm gonna get there. Basically, propagating these from old strawberry plants. So I'll show you. Strawberries put out runners, right? And we're planting those into compost. And then once the runners have rooted, we're cutting those off the mother plant. And we're taking these into the greenhouse just to kind of root them a little bit more. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually take those plants and plant a few beds of perennials right in the middle of our biggest problem areas. So we're gonna create a few new beds for annuals, but we're also gonna get rid of some annual beds for perennials. So the perennial roots, so it's gonna be a mixture of strawberries and blueberries, possibly, and a couple of them actually are gonna get some trees right in the middle of our garden. And they're gonna do a number of things. The trees obviously will eventually add shade and also like a different, marketing item. But what the perennial roots will do is help keep that soil in place. So when we're getting heavy rainfalls, hopefully add a little bit of water absorption. So we're also using cover crops and that sort of stuff. So that also will help if we're putting more roots in there. Maybe it will absorb water a little bit better. And we're doing all the stuff we always do, which is like leaving the roots in there, having constant photosynthesis. We're always doing those things, but something about the way our rainfall comes here, we don't get a good capillary effect a lot of times. We don't get like a nice moistening and then a long, hard, long, soft rains. We get, oh, there's 3 inches of rain today. boom, just all at once, super fast. And it's hard for our garden to kind of absorb that fast. So I think adding those little perennial roots in there, we'll see if that will help. So those are some of the things that we're doing. Let us know what you all do for path management that is alternative to perhaps to wood chips or alternative to what most people do. I always like to hear that stuff. Leave it in the comments section. Like this video if you like this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out the podcast. Check out that event at Jared's Real Food with Jared and Steven. It's gonna be rad. All right, bye. A crappy.